Hey everybody, George here again with another episode of the In Good Spirits podcast with...
Hi, Chris Lindstrom, as usual.
And I'm Bryan.
Brian's my good friend from the fine state of Massachusetts, coming to visit this weekend. And he's a regular on my Food About Town podcast. We talk all sorts of home cooking and, general food issues. But here today to talk whiskey. And, George, what's our topic for today?
Today, in spirit of, happy 4th to everyone who's listening on the day we put it up.
Yep, 4th of July weekend, so here we are.
American Single Malt Whiskey.
So, American Single Malt Whiskey. We've done some Scotch episodes recently where we talked about, single malted things. So, assuming it's the same concept and that this is a single grain malted base for the whiskey.
Yes, so the unfortunate thing about American Single Malt as it stands right now, though, is it's not actually a regulated term and it doesn't mean much of anything, unfortunately.
Okay.
However, the examples we're going to be having today, in fact, do adhere to the guidelines of 100% malted barley from one single distillery, etc., etc. But
Now, the question, one, you've got a countdown on your screen, which either is something going to explode or your camera's doing something cool. So while George is getting his camera reset, the question is, so when it comes to American single malt, since there's no regulation, could they use something like a different grain? Could they use instead of malted barley, could they use something else?
they could do anything they want because it's unregulated. It means nothing at all.
Okay.
But there's actually a group of distillers who came together and created the American Single Malt Commission, and they're actually pushing to get legislation passed to regulate American Single Malt as 100% malted barley from one distillery. And they have other rules and regulations that they've written into it in regards to aging and all that to give the same leeway in terms of casking as like Scotch does, where you don't need new oak to call it
Okay.
the category. You can go right to a wine barrel if you want.
Okay. No, that sounds interesting because, I mean, as kind of you and I have talked about, I think offline mostly, we may have mentioned it. I know you have some creativity thoughts in your heart about opportunities to do things like creative wood aging and potentially other malting as well, because it probably has some opportunity for more creativity, but it's also nice to restrict a category so you know what to expect too.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, both of these examples of single malt fall into what all those rules would be while being
Okay.
incredibly creative.
Oh, that's really exciting. So yeah, I think the first one, looking at our sample bottle, which these are our cute little sample bottles, by the way, that George makes up. These are cute bottles. They're very nice. So this is from the Journeyman Distillery, which I think I've tried one or two things from there, but I think through your largesse and your sampling, I think I've tried a couple of these. But what's this specific edition?
This specific edition is their Three Oaks single malt, named for the place they're from, Three Oaks, Michigan, as well as the three types of barrel this whiskey sees before bottling. And those barrels
Okay.
are ex-bourbon barrels, as well as ex-rum and ex-port barrels.
Wow, that's a lot going on. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's definitely cool stuff.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before. It's weird if before you start trying to get the nose on something, you don't know the notes, you can get far different results when you know what the actual bases are. And maybe it's just I wouldn't say a huge lack of experience, but just a matter of when you're trying to discern specific nose notes or tasting notes, knowing and not knowing is actually really interesting when it comes to how your brain works.
Absolutely true, yeah, without a doubt. Because when there's that like expectation, you'll often
Yeah.
you'll go searching for what you know should be there or think should be there rather.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing
No,
necessarily.
definitely not.
It's just a very different way of thinking about it. It changes the way you nose taste, changes the way you taste. Sometimes pure blind tasting is a great exercise. It can be obviously very when you get into wine blind tasting, trying to ID wines, it can be very pretentious. Not that I don't enjoy that kind of thing. I certainly do. I'm very pretentious about many things. But at the same time, it does inform the way you taste, and it's just an interesting way to. It's interesting to see how your mind reacts to it.
So on that note, though, I know you both may have done a little sniffing and tasting before we got going here, and
Yeah,
before
we
you
started a
knew.
little bit.
What did you think beforehand, before we got going?
I mean, so I'm a rather novice at tastings, but I noticed caramel, vanilla, right away.
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely has the caramel and vanilla. I think the grain's very prominent. So the question is this just malted barley, or does it have any other grains in it?
100% malted barley. Like I said,
Wow.
these guys that we're tasting today 100% fit what the proposed American single malt category would be. So yeah, 100% malted barley.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the grain presence on the nose is pretty strong. So it's not quite as integrated as some of the other ones we've tasted. I think the barley presence on the nose is pretty prominent. I don't It's not offensive, but it's pretty noticeable that it's grain forward, which usually indicates something that's a little bit younger.
And that this is, I don't know the exact age, but it's countable on one hand. I do know that.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And it's again, when we say that, we're just trying to define how this is one of the lessons I learned when we've been doing tastings is that when you get more grain presence on the nose, it tends to be a little younger. If you get big sharp notes, it tends to be a little younger. These are little tips and tricks from tasting that you start to build in your mind to start to indicate the age presence on a whiskey.
But beyond that grain, though, I get so much like mapliness and like almost like a pancakey. Like that grain, it comes through to me as like almost buckwheat pancakey.
No, I think that's very fair because there is definitely some sweetness on the nose, and it's not anything it's not omnipresent. It's not perfuming it too much, but it's very integrated sweetness, at least on the nose. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of dryness, a little bit of dustiness, and I think that's the barley influence because barley has that kind of profile. Whether you're cooking it as a culinary ingredient or as a spirit, as a spirit base. I'm not getting. It's not a heavy malt, so I'm not getting much, if any, smoke from it.
Yeah, definitely no smoke on this. Just regular old malted barley.
Yeah, and it's not smoked. It's not dark. It's not any of that stuff. It's very cleanly grain focused.
I get like a lot of dried fruit in there too.
I'm struggling. To be honest, I'm struggling to get fruit right now.
Think like dried, like like dried cherries, dried strawberries, like almost apricot-y.
No, as soon as you said strawberry, it popped. It popped on my nose, and it's that high note. It's that high note of strawberry when you're smelling them before you actually taste them. It's it's one of those weird strawberry flavors. I'm not a huge strawberry fan actually, and it's that very high part of it that's almost green like. Because this doesn't have a lot of huge fruit notes. It's maybe a little green when it comes to that.
That's fair, yeah.
It's very interesting. Anyways, I'm gonna go for my first.
What are you thinking there? You look like you're thinking about it.
I am. So, my statement about the youth is very valid, especially on the palate as well. Um, that sweetness we were detecting on the nose, not very present on the palate at all. So it's
Brian stumped.
No, I'm getting. It's weird. I don't know the proof on this, but I'm getting the alcohol presence. I'm getting that brightness, that alcohol brightness. I wouldn't say it's that like that like the fruit brightness or anything else. I'm getting that sharpness from the alcohol. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that it's 45% 90 proof.
Nailed it.
Wow, look at me.
You got it right on the head there.
I'm
For me, like this whiskey tastes. I'm going back to that buckwheat pancake thing.
yeah.
Really rich, heavy maple syrup on buckwheat pancakes with some fruit on top. That is
Yeah,
the embodiment of what is in the glass with this for me.
Yeah, I think the weird thing. So Brian, correct me depending on how it's hitting on your palate. I'm getting the sweetness right up front on the top of my palate, and George is counting down again. I'm getting the sweetness. I'm getting some of those vanilla caramely notes on my tongue and the top of my palate, but it fades really quickly into a more savory barley notes. Like
Ye-
that's how it's running over my palate.
I'm getting something similar where that sweetness is just right up front and then it just goes away.
Yeah, it degrades very quickly, and degrade not in a bad way, but it degrades from sweetness to savory barley notes very quickly.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that one.
See,
Yeah,
I
it's
like
almost-
the syrup, and then you get into the meat of the pancake. You know?
Yeah, you know what? You're keeping on with this pancake thing, and I don't disagree with you.
I
'cause
haven't
it's-
had pancakes in a while. No.
I actually prefer waffles very strongly to pancakes, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I just can't shake the pancake thing with this whiskey.
No, and it's really I think the buckwheat is it's a great way of describing it. The buckwheat pancake because it's almost like it was glazed, but the inside didn't absorb anything at all.
Right.
And the reason why we're being so specific about this is because the front flavors are sweeter. And I don't think it has a huge presence of the other. What were the other casks again? You said it was ex bourbon.
Bourbon, port, and rum.
So bourbon, port, and rum. I think I'm getting more of the bourbon presence than I'm getting the port and rum presence in the whiskey itself. And that's personally.
I get a little of everything. That bourbon, you get that carameliness, the vanilla, you get some of that woodiness, but the port brings in that dried fruit we're getting, a little of that spiciness that's very subtle there, and then the
Well,
rum,
now, it's weird.
that
It's weird now that
molassesy,
you-
mapley, like the mapliness is without a doubt from the rum.
Yeah, it's weird now that we go through it again. Now that I'm tasting it again, it's the beginning, middle, and end. So I'm gonna taste and walk through it again. Front of the palate, I'm getting that bourbon sweetness. I'm getting that a little bit of that almost powdered sugar sweetness. Middle, now that I'm focusing on how it's hitting the top of my palate, I'm getting the fruits. And as it lingers on the back, that longer finish, I'm getting those buttery rum notes. But they're not huge. Everything in this is very subtle. This is not bombing you with any of those flavors.
And that's one of the things I like a lot about it because everything's subtle and so well integrated that it just all feels like one cohesive, like coherent, like we'll say it's a dish, like the plate of buckwheat pancakes with syrup and fruit. It's the. I'm just gonna keep going with it. I'm not gonna stop now.
No, but I think this is actually very. I find this one a little bit challenging. I find it a little bit challenging to do at first glance, and the fact that you walked through it with the notes actually helped me to discern where in my palate and when in the tasting process each of those things were bouncing on there. And it's kind of a path. It starts very high and then kind of lingers through, which I find it's a very interesting whiskey because of that. It's not one dominant note. It's very complex, but also none of it's screaming, and that's kind of interesting in of itself.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's all very. I don't want to say monotone because that's definitely not the right way to put it. But each note, like each aspect of it, they're all. It's a choir. They're all singing in the same key, so to speak.
Yeah, and it doesn't have the benefit of a lot of age to merge everything together, and because all the things are very subtle, like it's not a screaming whiskey in any form. Like,
I mean, each part it seems after hearing both of you discuss it, I can each I guess each aging process or each aging component does make itself apparent, just not in a a blaring siren type of sound.
yeah, well, I think it's one of the interesting things about tasting something like this that doesn't have, like we've tasted some before where the sherry and the port was just like, oh, you can't ignore this. This is huge dried fruits. This
Oh
is
God, yeah.
huge.
Sherry bomb whiskey.
And this isn't that at all. This
No, not at
is
all.
everything about it's subtle. And to be honest, I mean, this is just part of my, you know, part of my learning process when it comes to this. Is I'm not sure I would have picked it out unless you told me all those things. But I'm glad you did, because now we've spent the time to work through it, and I feel like I've been able to give this a better run for its money.
Yeah, at best I would have been able to. Bourbon probably the easiest one. Rum maybe a close second, but no way I would have picked out the port.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So
We
overall,
only,
oh, go ahead, Chris.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say overall though, what do you think of it? Do you love it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? How do you see yourself drinking this? Is this what do you think?
So I say I like it. Probably not something I'd be going out to hunt necessarily. I'm enjoying it, but is it my most favorite of the things we've tasted? Not necessarily. Am I happy to have had it? Absolutely. We're dropping water for it, which I know George is not a fan of, but we're doing it.
No, but you know what? You do you, man. It's your Snickers. Eat it the way you want to.
I like it a lot more with the water. Just to drop it kind of rounds it out. It doesn't have quite as much sweetness up front, but it kind of rounds the whole palate out. Makes it a little bigger on the mid palate. Anyways, so short answer, yes, I like it. It's probably not something I'd reach for, though. Probably not something I'd go hunting for.
I mean, I'm more of a chartreuse in general person, so my flavor palette tends to be blown out a lot.
Oh, one of
Yeah,
those.
Yeah, well, we actually broke into, thanks to George for hunting this out. We broke into our VSOP oak aged chartreuse yesterday, and it's pretty fantastic. Maybe in a future episode, since I have it here, we're gonna taste a little bit of that stuff too. So
I think that'd be a good idea. So, I think it's kind of funny you mentioned with this whiskey though, not wanting to hunt for it. I'll use the volume at which came into New York State or comes into New York State with this whiskey. You're looking at maybe 24 to 36 bottles that come maybe every year
wow.
to the whole state. Yeah.
Now, to be fair, now that I've put a little bit of water in it, I like it a lot more. We've done this a few times now where it hasn't helped it. This one, I feel like it would be. I don't often say this. I think this would be great on a giant ice cube.
And that's absolutely fair, yeah.
I think a little bit of coolness and a little bit of dilution would actually do this very well. So, if you have the chance to try this, that would be my actual recommendation without actually putting a cube in it. But with that little bit of dilution, I think it rides a little bit smoother through the path. And that would be my recommendation. But what's our price point on this boy?
Around 60-ish.
Yeah. So I think this is one where I don't think I'd be picking it up at that price personally. But is it interesting? Is it good? Absolutely. Yeah. So
That's fair.
just as a quick advice, we may need to take a quick break because George's camera has a beautiful red battery note on.
I see that. Let's just
Are we going to roll through?
roll through because you know
All
what?
right,
I don't know
let's do
how long that's gonna last, so we'll
All right,
find
let's
out.
do it. So we're going
Power
to finish
through.
this.
Power through.
We only have our 2 Glencairns, so I'm going to finish the rest of this, and we're going to pour the next one, which is
Corsair Hydra.
now Corsair. That's a distillery I'm not as familiar. Oh, now that you show me the bottle, I've seen the bottle before, but I didn't recognize the actual distillery.
Yep.
Where is
And
it located?
they are in Nashville, Tennessee, and Bowling Green, Kentucky. They might have closed their Bowling Green, Kentucky location at this point. I don't remember. My brain is fried today. It was
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, it was a little warm today, and I was outside a lot, including blacksmithing in front of like a 1500-degree forge. So I've sweat out all of my intellect at this point.
What were you working on blacksmithing?
Just practicing, dicking around.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second.
Oh no! Oh, I'm dead.
So while George is gone, we're gonna start nosing the Corsair. Now, first nose. This is more when we talk about single malts. Now, this is one where I'm getting maybe a touch of smoke. This isn't what the last one was.
No, very different than the last one, and it is
Very
smoked.
different.
I'm not going to tell you what woods yet because I kind of want to.
I'll look at you.
Yeah.
So
but-
yeah, I'm definitely getting the smoke on the nose, which is very pleasant. I mean,
Yeah, a lot of smoke, less sweet.
yeah, less sweet. This is where I start getting those. I'm starting to get those appley notes, like unfiltered apple cider notes to it, which I love. This is when we talk about single malts and we talk about Scotch. These are things I really enjoy, and boy, I'm loving this. I'm loving this whole George isn't on the screen thing.
I know, yeah.
Because I get to dominate everything when it comes to the video and the audio. Although you can still chime in audio wise.
Yeah, you can see my black square illuminate green around the edge.
Feels really nice. So yeah, I love the smoke is really pleasant. Is where I'm looking out the window right now, and I'm seeing a sky that turns from purple to pink to like light yellow to the tree line. And this feels campfirey. This feels, but not in a, not in an overly smoky way, but in that you're very relaxed. You're sitting next to the campfire, and the smoke is kind of relaxing the palate. It smells fantastic. I'm really enjoying it.
I guess it's kind of like grilling or making s'mores. That's what I can think of this as.
I love that. I love that because I'm getting just that bare amount of sweetness. Like the bare amount of sweetness, I love the fruitiness. I'm enjoying everything about the nose on this. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, there's definitely some cider and apple juice type
Yeah.
of smell going on.
But I think I get that in a lot of scotches, and I get that in a lot of these single malt type things, especially with the smoke.
Yeah, usually when I have scotch, like Lafroig, the smoke can just blow out your senses.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and
this
it
is not
does.
there.
No, well, this isn't peated, and that's something
Yeah.
we covered in other episodes. The difference between the malt base and the peat, the peat aspects. With that iodine, those
Right.
medicinal notes.
And this one,
Well,
hardwood
on.
smoked for sure, but yeah, no peat. So it's been smoked, but not with thousands of year old dead vegetation with with trees, wonderful happy trees.
No, I think the hardwood aspect makes a lot of sense. Like I said, I'm getting apple. I'm not getting a dominant push of a specific wood. Like I may rue the day I said this. Like I'm not getting hickory. I'm not getting intense smoked hardwood. It's it's present, but it's not dominating anything that we're doing.
So without telling
What
you
about
yet,
while you're talking about it.
without saying what kind of woods are in there, I get like a lot of that apple, a lot of like I think of like applewood smoked bacon notes, like kind of savory,
Absolutely.
and there's a lot of like it smells like brisket. It's like very briskety, like a little
I think that,
sweet
yeah.
and briskety.
No, I think that's great because I'm not getting. I now that you mentioned brisket, I'm pulling some pepper notes. I'm pulling a little bit more of those high notes, but that also might be because I just tasted it too. Because I'm getting a little bit of the floral on the palate, those high florals like you get in black pepper. Wow. I mean, transitioning to the palate on this. Now, we talked about sweetness in the last where it started sweet. This one pops sweet. It doesn't just start sweet, it actually pops with a little bit of that sugar on the palate.
I definitely get like a candied bacon, almost.
No, I love that. I love that note. Because as much as the smoke is present on the nose, it's also very prominent on the palate.
I like that candied bacon note. Definitely, again, like sweet and savory at the same time. Like a nice like candied bacon's perfect, but like a hardwood smoked bacon where you're getting the wood notes, you're getting the sweet notes, you're getting the floral notes, you're getting savory, you're getting everything all at once. Like that caramelized sugar. It's not just sweet, it's like reductive sweetness.
Well, and I think that's a very interesting point because so I'm going to taste and go through my tasting process. We did this on the first one, but I'd like to do it again because this one also has I think, a very distinct journey. So you get the big rolling over the palate sweetness. Transitions quickly into those savory notes, but I think it transitioned into those very dark caramel notes. Like the back of the palate's almost burned caramel, which I love. I love dark, almost burned caramel note.
Yeah, you get that bitter, a little bit of bitter char at the end.
Yeah, and I think that bitterness is what makes this fantastic. Because if it stayed with that front super sweet note all the way through, it would be cloying because that first wave of sweetness over the palate is strong. Again, not in an offensive way. This isn't a sugar added or cloying whiskey, but that first wave is very sweet.
Yeah, most definitely very sweet, but just so rich, and everything's so
Yeah.
well integrated, and everything. Again, it comes together like a dish. And for me, it's brisket. This whiskey tastes like brisket.
See, and it's that last part of my palate that's getting. And for me, brisket. When we talk about brisket, my favorite briskets, and Brian will back me up on this because even though I don't currently eat meat, sorry to
Unfortunately.
disappoint everybody here. I am, I'd say 99% vegan right now. I'm a nerd about all of my foodstuffs, and brisket certainly one of those. And one of the dominant flavors of a properly made brisket is smoke and black pepper. And for me, when I think brisket, yes, I think the intense beefiness and the fattiness of a brisket, but I think black pepper.
I mean, I'm thinking this is more like burnt end.
See, I like that. I like that because I'm getting the pepper, I'm getting those high notes of the pepper, and that's what I'm enjoying on the very, if we're talking about like 3 or 4 phases of this is the lingering, those high florals, that almost sharpness that lingers, that sharp dryness that lingers on your palate. That's where I'm getting black pepper out.
Yeah,
Which I'm
absolutely. I can definitely
finding
see that for sure. This is definitely one of those whiskeys, though, where you just kind of want to hang out with it for a while, just sip slow,
Absolutely.
have not much else going on You don't want to have it with food simply because it's going to be better than the food you're having with it anyway. So why waste the food? And
No, I agree completely.
so I want you both to try this. Any wagers on what type of wood? And I'm going to give you a hint. There are 5. It is penta smoked. 5 different hardwoods were used in smoking, malting the barley.
So if we're talking 5 woods, so I'm gonna make some bets purely on logic and the fact that we know it's American. We know it's American.
Fuck yeah.
So since we know it's American, I'm going to lean towards American hardwoods. So I'm going to say there's applewood in it. That's my first guess.
All right.
Yes.
Do you want to go one by one here? Do you want to?
Well, we could go family feud style.
Just lay it on us.
Yeah, no. We're gonna guess a couple. So.
I don't know enough American hardwoods to even make this.
Okay.
Just imagine the most tasty looking trees that you just want to go up and bite the wood out of the tree. Those are the
Right.
those are the woods being used here.
Right. So I'm gonna guess the classic American hardwood. So I'm gonna guess apple. I'm gonna guess cherry. Because now that we talk cherry, I'm getting a little bit of it on my palate. I'm gonna guess apple, cherry, hickory, oak, and last one I'm struggling with. I'm gonna guess maybe pecan. That would be my 5th guess when we're talking pure American.
Holy shit. Well, you only got 2 right, but
That's pretty good.
but
That's pretty good.
your grasping at straws at the end there was actually right. 2 of
Yeah.
the 5 are apple and pecan.
Okay. So what do we do for the rest?
Sugar maple, black walnut, and persimmon.
Persimmon is not the most American of hardwoods. Now, I'm not going to lie to say that I'm tasting persimmon in this, and nor do I know what persimmon would taste like. But I do have to say, just from a culinary standpoint, persimmon is a fascinating fruit. I don't know about you, Brian. I mean, I love persimmon.
I haven't had that in a long time, so please remind us what that tastes like.
So
Tastes
my
like a
favorite,
persimmon, duh.
Well, obviously.
So my favorite persimmon memory is I was in San Francisco. We were in a market in the middle of the city, and I had bought what turned out to be a perfectly ripe persimmon, and it tasted like raw sweet corn. It had this milky, bright sweetness with a little bit of apricot roundness to it. And I think persimmon's a fascinating fruit. Problem is if it is underripe, it tastes terrible. Do not eat an underripe persimmon. Eat it when it's ripe.
I would just like to say 2 things because that made me think of it. One, though, I want to say, you eat a lot of food when you have a favorite persimmon memory instead of a persimmon memory. But also,
I have no persimmon memories.
yeah, my persimmon memory is this whiskey and seeing the fruit itself on a to Z list of fruits in my aunt's house as a kid, like on her poster.
It's a beautiful looking fruit.
It is, but
It's weird. Now that we're talking about persimmon, I can actually taste it in there, but it's again, I think suggestiveness when it comes to palate notes is prominent. But now I'm feeling like I'm getting some of those notes in there. But then again, I've never tasted or smelled persimmon wood before, so I might be completely off base with that.
well, I would say I think that when it comes to hardwoods from fruit-bearing trees, there's going to be some similarities because it's all the same plant. It's all the same thing there. But I just want to, real quick, speaking of never eating something underripe, passion fruit.
Oh, I've never had an underripe passion fruit.
So every packaging of anything you've ever seen with like passion fruit on it that shows the nice, smooth, beautiful looking fruit is a fucking lie. That is underripe. You want the nastiest looking, like, shriveled raisiny passion fruits. That's when they're ready. But nobody tells you that. And you go to the store and you're like, oh, passion fruit. I've never actually eaten one. So I'm going to grab the nicest looking one and the second nicest looking one because most of these look like ball sack.
Well, the trouble with passion fruit, I mean, passion fruit is so acidic.
Oh
The
yeah,
last
and
time I haven't had passion fruit in a while. The last time I even ventured in that realm was a passion fruit juice to make a white sangria more than anything.
Yeah, we had a cocktail tonight. We ventured out into the world to eat outdoors at a restaurant tonight, and I actually had passion fruit in one of my cocktails, which was delightful. This was not to venture too much into cocktails, but this was gin, passion fruit, elderflower liqueur, obviously Saint Germain, and a little bit of bitters. Delightful, because the passion fruit kind of balanced out the Saint Germain elderflower liqueur thing to make it a little bit brighter. But yeah, this is a fantastic whiskey. I'm loving this, and I'm 100% picturing sitting in front of this.
did you just spill your whiskey on Brian?
Yes, I did. I'm licking it off my hand because I loved it that much. So one, I can 100% picture sitting in front of a fire and really luxuriating in this, embracing the smoke characteristics, maybe burning some decent wood, and enjoying that part of it sitting in front of the fire. I think this would be a great outdoor fire whiskey on a warm evening.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
Seems much like
definitely.
tonight.
Yeah, time to set a fire. Set a fire. You know, your garage or something. If you don't need it anymore, you know, just go out there.
Indoor
Arson,
fire.
yes.
Artisan fire indoors. No, yeah, I love this one. I think this is much more up my alley. It's got some rounded profile, a lot of different things going on. So what's our price point on this boy, George?
Low to mid 50s, so nothing too crazy. I think it's absolutely worth it in
Oh,
every
100%.
every sense of the word there.
I am all about this one. So yeah, this is right up my alley. Oh yeah, we're gonna do a couple drops because we're all about that here on the Food About Town.
I hear the water really brings out the persimmon. Gonna take you right back to San Francisco.
Ooh. Keeps the mid palate rounded all the way through. Bigger sweetness, bigger roundness. Kind of flows a little bit differently. So this is one of those times I think both of these benefited from a couple drops of water. Opened them up a little bit, rounded them out. I think this one I probably prefer without, but just barely, because I think it's good with and without.
All right, Rain Man, what's the proof though?
Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to be basic and say it's I'd say it's I'm just going to say it's 80. I'm going to say it's straight 40%.
84 proof, 42%.
God damn it. I was thinking just over, but
Yeah. Well,
I
I'm
didn't
not
want to be too.
I'm not taking you to play blackjack with me now. I thought that was a chance to test that there. We're not going.
No, this is fantastic. I think at the low 50s dollar, I am all about this one. This is definitely my pick of the two. I absolutely love this.
Brian, what do you think?
I would say this is much more rounded than the first one we had.
Yeah, and it's got a lot more things going on. I think the smoke.
It smokes pleasant more than anything.
Very pleasant. Yeah, love this guy. George, what's your thoughts on it?
I fucking love this whiskey just because like both of these whiskeys, like I've got a bunch of American single malts we could have done for this.
Yeah.
But what I like about these two and what I thought would be fun to do with you guys was given your love of food like this. Like I get two dishes out of each, well, a dish out of each of these whiskeys. The first one, absolute breakfast, buckwheat pancakes, syrup with the dried fruit. And this is just brisket. A sweet, savory, peppery brisket.
Yeah, and I think that's a great description, and I think opening up your mind to describing whiskey from a culinary standpoint can open up the way you taste too. And I think that it's great to suggest things and see how it plays on your palate and your taste expectations. Not everybody has weird persimmon experiences
Or any
to be-
persimmon experiences.
Yeah, or any more than anything.
to be able to describe these things, but referencing it to what you already know on your palate is the way to taste these kind of things. So do your best, and then when somebody suggests it, maybe go out and try that. I think it's a great way to expand the way you do taste things and think of it from a culinary sense as well as a in good spirits sense. So I think let's close out for this episode. Bryan, where can they find you on the social medias if they want to reach out after our performance tonight?
I mean, why would they want to reach out? I mean, you can find me at Chue_on_this on Instagram or Twitter.
Yep, that's CHUE. And I'm at Strummy, Twitter, Instagram, and Food About Town podcast, all over your podcast dials. Mr. George, how do they find you other than on our video feed? Because I'm dominating the video tonight.
And on my screen, I even made you real big. So I'm a little black square right now. So this is your show today, and
what a
you
deal.
deserve it. But I can be found on Instagram at Whiskey Jedi, and you can find us on pretty much all of the different podcast streaming services except for Pandora because they haven't gotten back to me yet. So find us anywhere, and then on YouTube you can find us there too. And now you can find us on Facebook, the show, and on the thing with the square pictures, Instagram.
Yeah, the thing with the square pictures. Yeah, so
At
subscribe to
IGS Podcast.
Oh, IGS Podcast. Beautiful. So, yeah, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. And we'd appreciate if you subscribe on your favorite podcast app as well. If you have any trouble subscribing, let us know. We'll make sure we'll get set up on your favorite platform. So thanks so much for watching or listening. And we'll be back next time on In Good Spirits.
I'm waving, you just can't see it. Bye.
Cheers.